A bus sideswiped the load of a trailer at the junction of Jalan Besar and Ophir Road at about 1:40 p.m. on the 6th of June, thereby causing a massive traffic jam. Hi guys, this is the 8th of June 2024. Welcome to Rants, the comedy and tragedy of living in Singapore. The poor bus almost had its side ripped off. 4 bus passengers, including a 93-year-old and a pedestrian, were taken to hospital. How did that happen? Could it have been another lightning strike? In an earlier video, I warned of the danger of lightning, and here are 5 tips to avoid being struck by lightning in the lightning capital of the world, which is Singapore. Now, when you see lightning coming, tip number 1, get indoors as quickly as possible. Tip number 2, stay low and avoid structures like flag poles. Tip number 3, avoid bodies of water. Tip number 4, never seek shelter under trees or pavilions. And tip number 5, always check the forecast before heading outside. More on lightning. Yahoo Finance reports that Changi Business Park has become a lightning rod for citizens' anxieties about the city-state's wooing of foreign labor to meet business needs. The predominance of technical operations there has led to what a minister once said was a concentration of Indian expatriate workers, with some locals calling the area Chennai Business Park or Changalore. While the challenges faced by Singapore's business park landlords mirror those in other parts of the world, there are also some uniquely local issues that make marketing the properties an uphill effort. Now, this park was conceptualized in the early 1990s. Changi Business Park is part of a decades-long decentralisation drive by the authorities, which include plans to develop a new CBD in the island's west eventually. But the park is situated between Changi Airport, one of the busiest aerodromes in the world, and the country's largest exhibition venue, Expo. But the location is far from central. A bank employee who asked not to be named said she spends at least 90 minutes, that's 1.5 hours, commuting each way by public transport, which costs around $2. Now, a taxi or a ride-hailing service would take less than half the time, but can cost a whopping $45 during peak hours. The Edge is a publisher of business and financial reports on Malaysia and Singapore, with its headquarters based in Petaling Jaya, Selangor, Malaysia. I used to be able to browse their printed copies at our libraries. They just had a couple of days ago reported that Changi Business Park is now rapidly emptying out, dealing a blow to the Singapore government's meticulous urban planning efforts to get foreign businesses to expand their regional operations here. Overall, vacancy rates at the business park across 10 commercial properties have more than doubled in the past 3 years to nearly 40%. That's 40% vacancy. A former banker, Chris Kwan, said on Facebook that he doesn't think that this is simply a blowback from a work-from-home movement and the recent tech layoffs. Kwan believes that it has more to do with high rental costs and little advantage over cheaper places like Johor and Batam. Now, in the past, we were not cheaper, but we were better. Nowadays, we are just more expensive. In its own defense, CapitaLand Ascendas REIT has issued a clarification in response to claims about the occupancy rate at its properties at Changi Business Park, revealing that it has a well-diversified portfolio and a higher than average occupancy rates. Do we have to worry about being priced out of the competition? Guess who said this? I'll give you the answer at the end. Of course, price is not everything when we go shopping for groceries. Sometimes a slightly higher price can be justified. Food security is a critical issue for Singapore because our country imports more than 90% of its produce. The goal to grow 30% of food locally by 2030 aims to mitigate this dependency, but local farming is still struggling to create a viable ecosystem. Is it cost, consumers, or commitment? According to CNA, younger consumers are willing to pay more for locally grown produce, but they are also unlikely to cook at home. Stephen Chia and Crispina Robert speak to Kenny Ng, founder of The Local Farm, and Professor William Chen, director of the NTU Food Science and Technology Program. The most important question seems to be this: are people willing to pay more? Let's look at some of the comments on Facebook. Some people may be willing to pay more for freshness. That's the kind of support our farmers need. But how many people will support our local farmers and be not so price sensitive? The harshest comment comes from one James Tong, who says that if our local farmers cannot even achieve a price advantage, he expects a price advantage. So can you achieve a price advantage over foreign talent? Dennis Koh doesn't mince his words when he alludes to companies hiring foreign talent over Singaporeans. Humans are hypocrites, he says. Well, they want the best deals for themselves and the best bargains from others. Chua Jia suggests that we invest in foreign land to produce vegetables, but this has already been done. I have Singaporean friends who own eco farms in Malaysia. That doesn't make us less dependent on imports, and we will remain vulnerable to overseas supply chain disruptions. And the most encouraging comment comes from one Stephen Paulson, who suggests grants and subsidies. This issue has been touched on in the discussion. Kenny Ng, the only farmer in the panel, says that the government has actually spent tons of money to help these farmers kickstart their projects. He also says that it's only one part of the equation. What are the other parts? This discussion is somewhat unsatisfying because we are not hearing enough from the farmers themselves. I don't have much interest in agriculture. I'm a very unusual science stream student who's also interested in history and literature. Allow me to share a totally unrelated page from Indian history. Akbar was indisputably the greatest of the Mughal emperors of India. He reigned from 1556 to 1605 and extended the Mughal Empire over most of the Indian subcontinent. Now, who were the Mughals? My history teacher in secondary school taught us that Mughals were Mongols who happened to be Muslim. Well, they were actually a mixed race comprising Turk, Mongol, Persian, and later Indian. This is a picture of the first Mughal emperor, Babur, who was of Turk and Mongol descent. The second Mughal emperor, Humayun, nearly lost all the territories that his father had conquered. When Akbar succeeded his father Humayun as the third Mughal emperor, he was just a 13-year-old. The regents and various manipulators made him a puppet ruler. By the time he gained control over the regions, his domain was already disintegrating. Akbar conquered more territory than his predecessors did and ruled with great wisdom. He reformed and strengthened his central administration and the bureaucracy. He was tolerant of the Hindu majority and even married Indian wives. He also organized conferences to encourage scholars, writers, artists, and musicians to create great works of art. Akbar had a son by the name of Salim. In 1599, Prince Salim attempted a coup, occupying Agra with his forces. He backed down after being persuaded by his grandmother. After the incident, Akbar lost trust in his son and started grooming another son, Daniel, for the throne. But Daniel eventually died of alcoholism. Salim and Akbar fought frequently. With all his other sons dead, Akbar even resorted to grooming his grandson for the throne, and this turned Salim into a rebel. By the time of Akbar's death in 1605, he had only one surviving son. So Prince Salim ascended the throne and gave himself the title Jahangir. Guess what was the first thing he did? He built the most opulent tomb for his late father. You can read all the details on Wikipedia. Before this tomb was looted, it was adorned with gold, jewels, and exquisite carpets. Here are some of the pictures of Akbar's tomb that I took when I was in India. Why did Jahangir put so much money and effort into building a tomb for a father whom he had obviously hated to the core? That's because, being an alcoholic and an opium addict, he had to use his father's image to project his own legitimacy to the throne. Jahangir's empire was run by his 12th wife, Nur Jahan, and his son, Prince Khurram, who would later ascend the throne as Shah Jahan. But during his reign, he needed a grand monument to reinforce the fact that he was Akbar's son. Once again, who made this statement? That's all for now. Have an awesome weekend. Seize the day.